This tutorial is for Hiyahiya Grandma's Stretchy Bind Off. It's a great bind off to use for ribbing. Very similar to the tubular bind off in looks, but much easier. You can see here it provides nice stretch, and the transition around the edge looks really nice, almost invisible, just blends right in with the ribbing. I'm going to bind off using a needle that's a little smaller than the needle that I knit with, just to keep things extra neat and tidy. That's totally optional. We start with our knit stitch, and the general rule is we're going to purl the knits and knit the purls. So I'm going to start by just purling my first knit stitch, and now I have a purl stitch, but my yarn's in front. So I'm going to slip this stitch back and then move my yarn to the back behind my needle, setting myself up to be able to knit the purl. Knit the purls and purl the knits. And now I'm just going to do my first bind off, pulling this stitch over top of my more recent stitch. Now I have a knit stitch, which I want to purl, but my yarn's in the back. So I'm going to slip this stitch back, bring my yarn to the front, and then slip the stitch back, setting myself up for a purl. So now I'm going to purl the knit, and now I need to bind off, but my yarn's in the front. So whenever my yarn is in the front, I'm going to bind off from the back. So I'm just going to grab that stitch and bind it off, the same as we did before, just grabbing it from the back. And that's it. It's as simple as that. I'll just demonstrate a few more times. Here we are setting ourselves up to do a knit stitch. So I'm moving the yarn to the back and knitting the purl. And now my yarn's in the back, so I'm just going to do a simple bind off. And now I have a knit stitch, which I'll want to purl. So I'll slip the stitch back to my left needle, put the yarn in the front to set myself up for my purl, purl the knit. Now my yarn is in the front, so I'm going to bind off from the back. Now I have a purl stitch, so I'm going to slip my stitch back, put the yarn in the back, so I can knit the purl. And I'm going to bind off from the front. I have a knit stitch. I'm going to slip the stitch back, put the yarn in the front so I can purl the knit. And I'll bind off from the back since my yarn was in the front. And I just keep doing that until my very last stitch. So here I am on the last stitch. It's a purl. So I'm knitting the purl, binding off, and I'll pull my yarn through, snip it. Now I have a tail that I'll need to weave in. And that's all there is to it. That's Hiyahiya Grandma's Stretchy Bind Off. I hope this video has been helpful.